Hi, everybody. It's Mark Middleton from Growing Boulder. And as you know, from the very beginning, this COVID-19 virus has been an unmitigated human tragedy affecting hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. But obviously, it's also having a major impact on our local, our state, our national, and our global economies. And since the pandemic is spreading, still moving very quickly, it's really impossible to know with any certainty what the overall impact will be. And to get perspective today, it may be totally different tomorrow. Here's what we do know so far, though. The recovery program here in the U.S. will cost trillions of dollars. Nearly 7 million people filed for unemployment last week, and the number of claims here in our state of Florida tripled that week. Economists say that the unemployment rate is now 12 to 13%, which is the worst since the Great Depression. Real unemployment, though, could be closer to 25%, and millions more are filing claims each and every week. So I guess the big question becomes, when will it end? How will it end? How long will the economy take to recover? We are pleased today to have one of the nation's top economists and economic forecasters with us live. He is Dr. Sean Snaith, who directs the University of Central Florida's Institute for Economic Forecasting. He served as a consultant for local governments, multinational corporations, and he has a national reputation for his unique ability to explain a very complex subject matter in a way that we can all understand. And boy, does he have his work cut out for him today. Dr. Snaith, welcome so much. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, the pandemic obviously has been a public health disaster, but very quickly it's becoming a full-blown economic disaster. What is your forecast today, at least for companies both small and large?
Well, I think, right now the national economy is in a recession that is deeper than the Great Recession that we went through in 2008. I think it differs fundamentally from that recession because this recession is directly a function to the public health measures that have been put in place. We've effectively turned the switch off on large swaths of our economy, and that's not how the market economy typically functions when we're moving from an expansion into a recession. It's a more gradual process. You don't see these 1 week, 2 week spikes in unemployment claims like we're seeing now. It's a gradual build as businesses sort of are making decisions based on what they're seeing on the ground. This time around it was just shut it down, and so that's why we see this flood of applications. The system's not built to handle it, and it is a unique recession in that regard.
Strange times. I think we say that 10 times a day. And obviously, as you know, Congress recently passed a $2.3 trillion emergency rescue package for individuals and small businesses. How big of an impact do you think that money will actually make?
Well, I think on the positive side of this action, this was an incredibly rapid response by the federal government in terms of delivering economic stimulus. If you go back again to the past recession, most recently, about 16 months before the totality of all the federal programs were before they were rolled out. So, to have it done in a matter of weeks, I think was important, again, because the speed with which this recession hit, I think it was necessary. But, are these measures as they stand now sufficient to offset the losses? And I think the answer to that is clearly no.
You are based in Central Florida, and obviously the Florida economy was in great shape before this pandemic, but very low unemployment. But some are saying that it could be one of the states that is hit hardest, given that 32% of our population or thereabouts works in either the hospitality or the entertainment industries. I think Disney furloughed another 43,000 union workers this weekend. Is Florida going to suffer more than many states because of the way that our economy is built?
Well, I think the pain is going to be more pronounced in Florida for sure, because when you just shut down those major employers, they're drivers of tourism, and it's not just the parks or the beaches, it's all the businesses that service people that are coming to Florida for those reasons. And then you can go down the supply chain, all the companies that do business with Disney or Universal, and all the restaurants and retail that feed off of visitation. The passenger traffic at Orlando International Airport is down some 96, 97%. So this is a major blow, and I think anywhere where leisure and hospitality are a big part of a region's economy, these shutdowns are going to have, at least in the short run, a very profound and negative impact.
I don't know. I think it might have been Mike Tyson that says everybody's ready for a fight until you punch him in the face. And I think consumer confidence is pretty much like that as well. We were really, really confident, but we've all taken a punch to the face. Do you think that's going to take a while for consumers to gain their confidence in this economy again?
Well, I think the consumer confidence in terms of the economy, I think that's going to be a direct function of how quickly people can get back to work. I mean, nothing drains your confidence like not having a paycheck. So that's going to be a critical element of restoring confidence in the economy. And you're right. If we roll back time here to the pandemic era, the economy was in incredible shape. The labor market was one of the strongest I've ever seen, not just nationally, but even more so here in Central Florida. So, the quicker we can get back to work, I think the less of a blow it'll have on consumer confidence. And I mean, I'm optimistic in that regard, because of my earlier comments that this is not a recession born out of the natural mechanisms of the economy, where it's sort of a slow slide into recession. And during that whole ride down, the psychology is being impacted. Businesses are concerned about the future. They start pulling back, and you get this snowball effect, the psychology of recession. This is starkly different from that. And so people, I think, can realize this was an outside force. This wasn't internal weakness that expanded. This was foisted upon the economy. And so in that regard, I'm hopeful that we could see in the second half of the year a more robust and very sharp recovery. The one caveat I would have to say here is the fear factor. How frightened are people going to be about COVID-19 once we start lifting some of these restrictions? Will people, storm back into public places and shopping malls and restaurants and theme parks and beaches because they've been pent up for months, or will there be some lingering fear about the virus? And I think data is going to be the solution to that. The more we know about the virus, I think the better a better handle we'll have on how deadly it actually is or isn't. How does it compare to a seasonal flu in that regard? And so as the data comes in, I think the models will improve in terms of predicting outcomes on the public health side, and that could help ameliorate some of the fear. Because we don't shut down the economy or stop going to restaurants during cold and flu season. This is likely to reappear at some point in the future. So I'd like to see the trillions of dollars poured into, fast tracking a vaccine and fast tracking therapeutic treatments that could address the virus and get the economy turned back on, so we don't need to pump all this trillions into the economy to offset these public health measures.
All that said, I think we learn all the time that those who suffer the most, in any sort of natural disaster or something like this are the poor, the disabled, and the elderly. And you mentioned paychecks. I mean, people stop getting paychecks. They stop paying rent. They stop paying their mortgages. How might this affect the housing market? I think we all remember, all too well, the crash of the housing market not that many years ago. Are lenders going to be lenient now? Are there going to be a lot of foreclosures? How do you see that?
I think delinquencies will certainly see a spike here. And again, not to sound like a broken record or a corrupt MP3 file, the impact's going to depend on how long the economy shut down. if people are able to get back to work, the economy's opening up again, then people are going to have those paychecks and be able to pay rents and mortgages. The longer that they're unable to do that, then the longer they're unable to make these payments, and then delinquencies could slide into foreclosures. But I will say this, and again, it's part of my optimism that this rebound can be much more robust than after the last recession. We had at the heart of the last recession, not just the financial crisis, but the housing markets collapse. And here in Florida, that weighed down on our recovery for many years. And, by my reckoning, Florida did not fully emerge from that last recession until 2012. Even though the national recession ended in June of 2009. And part of that reason was the damage that was done to the housing market. Prices had fallen so significantly and so much home equity was completely destroyed. And that burden, that lost wealth, weighed on consumers for a long time. And it took 10 years for prices to recover from that episode. I don't think this is a repeat of that. It will put some stress certainly on the sector because if you can't make loan payments, if you can't make rent payments, there is a bit of a cascading effect. But all of this comes back to how long do we lock the economy down? What's the cost here? What's the benefit? And I realized early on when these measures were being implemented that I think elected officials were going to and perhaps did err on the side of caution, in that they're more likely to impose more stringent public health measures, because after the fact, there's going to be no way to just kind of go back and say, oh, we did too much. This was excessive, because the statement will be, well, if we didn't do that, it would have been much worse. And there'll be no way to prove or disprove that. On the other hand, if you go too light, and you're a governor in a state and you don't impose these restrictions and you see a spike in cases and fatalities, that finger's pointed directly at you. Maybe we've erred on the side of caution a bit too far, but I think the conversation, rightly so, has come around to include not just the public health, but the economic health of the economy and the implications of these public health measures in that regard.
It is an important conversation, one that none of us have ever seen throughout our lifetimes, with, a balance between, literally life and death in many different ways. We've been speaking with Dr. Sean Snaith, who directs the University of Central Florida's Institute for Economic Forecasting. And Doctor, before we let you go, tell us a little bit about your work there at the University of Florida. What do you do on a daily basis?
Well, these days I throw yesterday's forecast in the garbage and start again. It's been interesting times for sure, because every time a new policy is announced, whether it's a stimulus package from the federal government or a new program by the Federal Reserve, it changes the economic landscape and the outlook for the forecast. And so what we do at the Institute is we put out quarterly forecasts for the U.S. economy. These are comprehensive forecasts that are downloadable and readable on our Institute's website. And then after doing the national forecast, we move on. We do a forecast for the state of Florida and its economy. And again, it's a detailed forecast. And within that publication, we have forecasts for various metropolitan economies around the state as well. And so, I've redone the U.S. forecast. I usually update it on a monthly basis. I think in the past 2 months, I've gone through 8 cycles. And so it's keeping me busy, that's for sure. Keeping me off the streets.
It's good to be busy these days. And before, a final question here, as you do these economic forecasts, we're obviously concerned about the 65 plus population here in Central Florida who are impacted more than others by this virus. Do you factor in the large number of older people in Central Florida when you make your economic forecast? Can you give us any insight into how they're faring or how they might fare?
Well, again, here we go back to the public health measures. I think, and again, I'm not a real doctor. I think that we're likely to see some sort of graduated lifting of restrictions and public health advisories in a way that they remain more stringently in place for those that are most at risk. And so in that regard, what we know so far is that, the virus is more lethal for older people, and especially so if they have underlying health conditions. And so, we may see, unlike Spanish flu, younger people are not dying at high rates from this virus. Many are asymptomatic. We may see, those folks sort of have some of the restrictions lifted and open up those segments of the economy, but it could be a few more months. And I mean, I would, advise my parents who are approaching 80 that, they should be cautious until there's a really good therapeutic treatment or a vaccine is in place. But, that being said, the economy has to function. The supply chains have to run. Food has to be produced, transported. Healthcare has to be provided. People might think this is a boon for the medical industry when in fact it's not. Many hospitals are laying off staff, and they're not doing procedures that they would normally do. And so this is this hurts across the board. I mean, other than toilet paper manufacturers, I think most parts of the economy are feeling some pain from this.
All right, Sean, we really appreciate it. Folks, he is Dr. Sean Snaith from the University of Central Florida's Institute for Economic Forecast. Part of our efforts in conjunction with Florida Blue Medicare to bring you a lot of smart people to share their thoughts, their insights into this unique situation that we all find ourselves in now. You can find information about his University of Central Florida initiative, all that they're doing, by going to growingbolder.com/COVID. It's where we are aggregating a wealth of information to help you stay informed and stay connected as we battle COVID-19. And be sure to check out Growing Bolder and Florida Blue Medicare's Facebook pages for daily updates. Dr. Snaith, once again, thank you so much. It's good to see you, and all the best to you and your family.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, folks, and thank you so much for joining us. We'll look for you next time with another live report right here on Facebook.